Hey guys, what's going on? My name is Aldas, and today I'm going to be talking about the three teams that came into Formula 1 at the start of 2010 and how they are an example of why quality is so much more important than quantity in Formula 1. Now, more specifically in this video, we are going to get into those teams and how it all kind of panned out and really how the grid evolved from what it was almost 10 years ago into the high quality grid that we have today, which gives us close championship fights throughout the midfield and certainly gives us a much better show than it was a few years ago. Now guys, don't forget, if you want to support the channel, then drop a like, smash that subscribe button, and check out my social medias. Instagram and Twitter will be above. But guys, let's get into it. So first of all, what teams am I talking about and how did these teams come into Formula 1? Now, back in 2009, with Formula 1 ready to head into a new decade, there was a lot of excitement for the 2010 season. More than anything else, there was a lot of movement in the top teams, with Fernando Alonso going to Ferrari, the 2009 world champion Jenson Button joining Lewis Hamilton at McLaren to make an all-British partnership, and other intriguing storylines to follow, like the young talent Sebastian Vettel and the return of Michael Schumacher. So, the sudden influx of new teams, however, came back in mid-2009 when Formula 1 announced that it would consider introducing a cost cap for 2010 for £40 million. Many people saw this as an opportunity to quickly and rather cheaply enter the world's biggest motorsport and compete with the biggest teams. However, although there was a whole host of new teams bidding to enter Formula 1, the cost cap never actually came into effect as the FIA went back on their word and the teams decided against it. This meant the playing field wouldn't be as even as the new teams wanted, but nevertheless it was too late for them to turn back now. 5 teams initially got approved to race for 2010, and that was Manor Grand Prix, which would eventually be called Virgin Racing, Lotus, HRT, and then Stefan GP and USGP as well. However, both Stefan GP and USGP never fully materialized and failed to get everything up and running, so the 3 new teams would be Virgin Racing, Lotus, and HRT for the 2010 season. Now, these 3 teams among Formula 1 fans would pretty much be known as the backmarker teams, and for most of their time in Formula 1, they would almost completely be forgotten about and never shown on TV just because of how poor they were. Now, the main reason as to why these 3 teams were doomed to fail from the start and as to why their entry into Formula 1 was such a disappointment was that everything was rushed. They started on the back foot and were never able to catch up to the rest of the field. In the case of Lotus, the entire team only began in September of 2009, which meant they had to completely create an entire F1 team and design a car in only 5 months to be ready for the first race of the season in Bahrain. As for the Virgin Racing team, they only had 10 months to not only start a Formula 1 team, but also find facilities to build their cars in and run the team as well. And as for HRT, they were by far the most unorganized team of the 3. They couldn't even build a car in time for winter testing, which by the way is scary to think that the team had never turned a wheel before the first race of the season. Oh, and to make things worse, Karun Chandhok, who was one of the drivers for the team, his car was first assembled during qualifying for the first race of the season. They only just managed to assemble the car ready for qualifying, so a rookie had to head out, having never driven his Formula 1 car, straight into qualifying for the team. So unsurprisingly, that meant both the HRTs qualified on the back row. So the next question is, just how bad were these teams really? Well, certainly not as bad as some teams from the 70s or 80s who weren't even allowed to qualify for a race because they were so off the pace. However, this was now the 2010s, and in the modern era of Formula 1, we expected to have not only teams that were of high quality, but teams that also had high standards and were well-organized outfits. Now, Haas is a brilliant example of what I am talking about. They are a really good example of a well-run, well-organized team coming into Formula 1 for the first time. Gene Haas announced that he would create a brand new Formula 1 team in 2014, and although initially he wanted to join for the 2015 season, he postponed his entry to 2016 to make sure the team wasn't rushed and were well prepared with a quality car. Now, this is in complete contrast to how the brand new 3 teams joined back in 2010, and the really big and most important thing about them is, as far as how slow these teams were, well, for comparison, the 2019 Williams undoubtedly was the slowest car on the grid, and in the first qualifying session of 2019 at the end of Q1, there was a 4-second gap between the fastest car of Lewis Hamilton and the slowest car, which was the Williams of Robert Kubica. In the first qualifying session of 2010, however, at the end of Q1, there was 8 seconds between the fastest car of Sebastian Vettel and the slowest car, which was the HRT of Karun Chandhok. But it wasn't just the pace that was lacking, and honestly, there was so much incompetence by some of these teams at the start of the 2010 season. Despite their strong backing, Virgin not only finished last out of all of the 3 teams, but they also built a car at the start of the season with a fuel tank too small to finish the race. You just can't make this up, and it was an embarrassing misjudgment that just summarized how unorganized the team was. As for HRT, their main issue was money. The team actually never upgraded the car because they didn't have enough money from the start of the season to the end. I mean, can you just imagine that in the modern formula, not putting a single upgrade on your car? And on top of all of that, they had a revolving door of different drivers who could basically just bring money in their cars. Here's an example. Mercedes in the last 10 years has only had 4 drivers, beginning with Michael Schumacher and Nico Rosberg, then of course Lewis Hamilton joining in 2013, and then Valtteri Bottas joining for 2017. HRT had 4 drivers in just the 2010 season alone. I mean, it was just ridiculous. Now, the driver situation at HRT was a mess. There were drivers who only did 1 race, others who drove for half a season, and others who were basically in and out of the car at various races in the season. Not only was it difficult to follow for the fans, as the driver lineup was changing basically every single race, but for the team itself, the lack of continuity made it difficult to get consistent performances throughout the year. Their drivers were also a mixed bag. Don't get me wrong, drivers like Karun Chandhok weren't actually bad, despite what some people said, but they had a terrible car to work with, and with the revolving door of drivers, no one driver could consistently actually stay in the car to improve and develop, because HRT went with young drivers with money instead of more experienced drivers with quality. Honestly, it really did seem like at one point any random person off the street could have jumped in that car if they had a spare 5 million lying around. Now, Lotus, to their credit, actually looked like a proper team. Right from the off, they hired 2 solid, experienced drivers in Jarno Trulli and Heikki Kovalainen, and even their car, despite not being quick, actually looked like a proper F1 car with a decent amount of sponsors giving them good backing and actually quite a nice livery as well. The team management was by far the best, and in the end, they finished ahead of all of the new teams. At the end of the day, with the bad start that these new teams had, they never really made an impact during the season, often being forgotten about during the races and only being mentioned when they were involved in a crash of some kind or if they were annoying the other drivers whilst being lapped. That was literally it. The pace of their cars also never really improved, and it had gotten so bad and embarrassing for Formula 1 that because of these new teams, the FIA even brought back the 107% rule as a result of these teams for 2011, which basically meant that if you didn't qualify within 107% of the pole lap, you wouldn't be able to race. So the next big question is, what eventually happened to these 3 teams? Well, unsurprisingly, it didn't take long for them to start falling like dominoes out of the sport, and it's not something that anyone was happy about because as fans, we love an underdog story and never want to see a team either leave or go bankrupt, but due to how they came into the sport, it was almost an eventuality. The first team to go was HRT, who left at the end of the 2012 season after 3 very underwhelming years in Formula 1. The team owner had already announced that HRT was for sale and was trying to find a buyer during the mid part of the 2012 season, but when a buyer wasn't found, the team closed and went into liquidation. In their short time in Formula 1, HRT didn't really achieve anything of significance, scoring 0-point finishes with a best race finish for one of their drivers of 14th. To be honest, I think the most memorable moment for HRT in their very short history in Formula 1 was when Sebastian Vettel called Narain Karthikeyan a cucumber after colliding with the back marker during the 2012 Malaysian Grand Prix. And although the team was quite forgettable, I personally will always have a soft spot for them because the first car I drove when I started playing the Formula 1 games was the 2010 HRT. So yeah, they'll always have a little soft spot in my heart. The next team to fall was the Lotus team, which changed its name to Caterham, and its departure from Formula 1 came at the end of the 2014 season. Their exit from Formula 1 was anything but clean, however. They missed certain races in 2014 due to problems with money, and the team changed management also midway through the year, and in the end had to resort to crowdfunding to try and stay in Formula 1. It wasn't enough, however, and after endless money issues and a legal battle with employees over unfair dismissal, the team finally finally called it quits at the end of 2014. Again, there was very little to remember of Caterham/Lotus achievements, and in the end, like HRT, they failed to score a single point in 5 years, with a best race finish of 11th twice, courtesy of Vitaly Petrov and Marcus Ericsson. Although I must say I always was a big fan of their green livery and thought it added something different to the Formula 1 grid. Now, Virgin Racing, which became Marussia in 2012 and then later became Manor, had a roller coaster of a journey, and although it was the most successful of all the three teams, scoring a total of 3 points in its 7 seasons, it also had some serious low points as well. The high points for the team were its very few points finishes, but also some of the young drivers and some of the young talents that it brought into Formula 1. Drivers like Charles Pic, Max Chilton, Jules Bianchi, Pascal Wehrlein and Esteban Ocon all started at Marussia/Manor, and really, they added youth to the team as well as showing real talent when they got the chance. However, the problems Manor/Marussia went through were very similar to HRT and Caterham. Despite lasting the longest in the sport and actually scoring points, the team went through multiple management changes and eventually went into administration in 2015, finding a buyer and becoming a new team named Manor for 2016, albeit with the same staff in the same factory. Their final season came in 2016, and like the others, it was almost inevitable off the back of years of instability due to lack of funds, which could be seen by the lack of sponsors on their car. And although the team did have aspirations of competing in 2017, even a picture showing a mold of a new generation 2017 car, the team's parent company went into administration in early 2017, which meant that any hopes for Manor returning to Formula 1 were now over. However, undoubtedly, the team would be mostly remembered for some of the most tragic accidents in recent history in Formula 1 that took the lives of 2 different drivers in their cars. Now, in July 2012, test driver Maria Di Villota, whilst testing for Marussia at the Duxford airfield, crashed into the lift gate of a transporter, losing her right eye. Although she survived the crash and recovered, she died a year later from neurological injuries sustained from the crash. And more recently in 2014, Jules Bianchi, who was a Ferrari junior driver at Marussia and a rising star in Formula 1, despite scoring the team's first ever points in Monaco with a phenomenal result, also had a very heavy crash during a wet Japanese Grand Prix into a Marshall's crane tractor, and Jules did survive the crash initially but then remained in a coma until his death 9 months later. So in summary, what did Formula 1 learn from these 3 teams? Why have I just talked about these 3 teams at the start of the last decade? Well, as much as we talk about the Williams team struggling at the back of the grid in 2019, they're still a team that we believe can regain form and get back to competing with the rest of the field. Unlike the 3 teams at the start of the last decade, quality in Formula 1 is always better than quantity in almost every single aspect. These teams never really added to the show as they were never able to challenge the rest of the grid. So in the end, we were left with maybe good drivers we just never knew, driving in bad cars at the back of the field in vastly underprepared and underfunded teams that were never able to make the gains they needed to challenge the rest of the grid. The way these teams enter the sport at the last minute, hugely underprepared, trying to find any sponsors they could and finding average pay drivers to fill their seats made it inevitable that they were going to fail. And whilst it wasn't all bad, in the modern formula, teams like that will never last. And we should appreciate, and this is the really big takeaway from this video, is that we should appreciate the true quality of the field we have now, with every single team actually in the last 4 years scoring at least 1 point, and hopefully it gets even closer in the future and we see better racing and again increasing the quality of the sport and just making Formula 1 a better sport altogether. Well guys, there you go. That is my video on why quality is so much more important in Formula 1 than quantity. Now in the comments below, let me know guys, what did you think about these 3 teams? What did you think about the teams and the drivers? I look forward to seeing what you guys think in the comments below. Now if you did enjoy this video, don't forget to drop a like, smash that subscribe button and check out my social medias. Instagram and Twitter will be above. And guys, I'll see you in the next one. Bye guys.